Here we go.
The Hollywood foothills of North Carolina. Welcome to the 51st edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. We never need an ultimate cut to ensure epic content for you. I, of course, am your host, the real Brad Bell, and joining me today, as per usual, is the one and only Jerry Reed, also known as
Barbecue 17, and we never need ultimate cut because we always go over 3 hours long.
That's right, exactly. If we had an ultimate cut, it would be like 6 hours.
6 hours of podcast.
We're trying to get people to listen to at least 6 minutes, so 6 hours is pushing it. Of course, Jerry's joining us representing his toy blog, actionfigurebarbecue.com.
Actionfigurebarbecue.com.
So, what we're going to do today, in case you haven't figured it out, our featured review is going to be Batman vs. Superman Ultimate Edition, which was released on Blu-ray in July, and I just got around to watching it. Jerry loaned me his copy, so we're going to talk about that in depth. We're just going to say when that review starts, spoilers from the get-go.
Yeah, we're assuming you've already seen this movie. It's been out for... Ultimate Edition's been out for at least, a month now?
Yeah, almost. I think it came out July 20th.
Because it came out on DVD before it came out on Blu-ray.
That's odd.
It was odd. I think it was because rentals tend to do DVDs more.
Yeah.
So.
And Redbox and stuff, because it's cheaper when people
definitely.
get DVDs, even though there's a waiting period. Also, before we review the Ultimate Edition of BVS, we're going to give our reaction, don't give it yet, Jerry, to the Star Wars Rogue One second trailer, which that should be fun. And as usual, we're going to get into what we've been checking out and the epic news items of the week. So let's go ahead and get into what we've been checking out this week, Jerry.
Check checklist? Check. Double check checking of checklist? Check.
So, Barbecue, what have you been checking out this week since we last spoke?
About 10 minutes ago, my wife and I just finished the third season golly, go back to bed. Third season of American Horror Story, which is called Coven. It was about a group of witches in New Orleans.
So Kristen stuck it out. She made it through.
She liked this. Yeah, she liked this one. I guess she claims she did watch all of the first season.
Just like I claimed I watched the Ultimate Edition of BVS.
Yeah, so, but now we
Which
watched,
I did.
It was pretty good. It kind of... I really liked it. I mean, it's only 13 episodes, and so it definitely kept my attention the whole way through. Really good performances, really good characters. Have you watched any American Horror Story?
I never have watched American Horror Story, which I love FX shows. I love horror. It sounds like, I like Evan Peters. It sounds like it'd be right up my alley. I just never got around to it.
It's a pretty cool show, and I mean, honestly, what you really can do is you can watch any season that appeals to you. Because it's kind of an anthology show where each season is a different story.
Are they all 13 episodes, pretty much?
They're all about 12 or 13 episodes. I think the first season's like 12 episodes or so. But it's an anthology season. So each season's its own story, and then the next season, they use a lot of the same actors and actresses over and over again. But they're going to have a different storyline, a different setting, a different plot, different characters. So it's kind of cool. So if there's one season that really appeals to you, like the first season's about a haunted house in Hollywood where I think it's Hollywood, somewhere in California, where like all of these celebrities have been murdered and stuff over the years, and people have, committed suicide, all kinds of crazy stuff, and this family moves in it. The second season is about an asylum in the 60s that's run by the Catholic Church that actually has, like, alien abductions and like, a former Nazi scientist who's actually, like, in hiding there doing experiments and serial killers and all kinds of things. Third season's about a coven of witches in New Orleans who are looking for the next supreme, like, their next, leader of their coven. But they're also in battle with, like, a group of witch hunters and in battle with...
The Hansel and Gretel show up.
Oh, man.
The Jeremy Renner show up.
If Hansel and Gretel showed up, this would have been my favorite season ever.
And then fourth is Freak Show,
Fourth is Freak Show.
Have you watched Freak Show?
Nope, we're getting ready to watch it. Probably start it tonight.
So, of the 3 you've watched, which one's your favorite?
Asylum, which is the 2nd season. I think it has characters like... It clearly has some really good characters, like heroic, that you're cheering for the whole time, and characters that are clearly villains. This season was way more ambiguous.
How scary is it? Is it frightening?
So this is the thing my wife and I were saying. So I watch a lot of horror movies, and of course, horror is like the most subjective thing. I've seen people that have said, they thought the Blair Witch Project wasn't at all scary, or Paranormal Activity, and those movies kind of creep me out. And then people talk about some other movie that they've seen, and I'm like, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was that terrifying. So
7 always, it freaks me out.
Yeah.
Kevin Spacey,
now, I don't think it's
Brad
like a
Pitt.
scary movie, but it is a good movie. It's weird. It's definitely disturbing.
But 7's more of a psychological tease as Jerry's daughter. Hey, Allie, how are you doing? That kind of scared me a little bit.
She just popped in.
When she opened that door, but Allie, maybe she'll be a fan of horror one day, like her dad, but now we just let her watch horror in the form of the first 5 minutes of BVS Ultimate Edition before you put her down for bed.
She has not watched that.
I know.
She's definitely, though, she enjoys Ghostbusters, the daddy edit version, where every now and then there's scenes where I'm like, okay, go out of the room. But she likes the Ghosts and Ghostbusters and Scooby-Doo.
Did you start out with Christine or It for bedtime stories? I'm just curious.
So,
of course, I'm being very facetious.
Oh, yeah.
But Jerry, he is a horror aficionado. Probably my friend who is most in the horror more than I am. I enjoy horror. It's not something I go around, basically advertising to people.
Yeah.
But guess what, Jerry?
What?
This Tuesday, do you know what comes out on Blu-ray and DVD?
Conjuring 2?
No. I think it may be even better, and I'm surprised you have not got it pre-ordered, because I'm pretty sure you haven't watched it. Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Oh,
the TV series.
I have seen the first 6 or 7 episodes.
Okay,
my dad and I have watched them together because he has access to it.
Yeah. It was on Stars.
Yeah. So he would.
I don't have Stars.
We logged in and we watched it. I watched it when I was visiting my parents.
Did you enjoy it?
I loved it, man.
Okay.
I loved it.
Okay, because I'm actually gonna go pick that up on my way home from work.
So you've seen the originals, right?
Yeah, I've seen all the originals.
Okay, I just remember Andrew's the one I think that's never seen the original film.
My favorite's Evil Dead 2. Army of Darkness is probably the funnest, I think. But if I had to pick between the 3, it would be Evil Dead 2.
Army of Darkness is at least in my top 10 favorite films of all time.
You and I saw the remake together.
We did. You're right. We did see the remake together.
Yeah, that was enjoyable.
It was a pretty intense movie.
We reviewed that. It was a lot of body horror and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely a lot of body horror. Not Saw level, though. Like,
no.
I don't like...
Or Hostel. Or
yeah,
it's not torture porn.
I didn't enjoy Hostel that much. I enjoyed the premise of Hostel, but the movie just fell flat for me. The original Saw was really good. I didn't like the second one that much, and by the third one, honestly, one of the only times I've ever felt physically ill, like watching a movie... And I was
Batman versus Superman Ultimate Edition, right?
I thought you liked this movie.
We'll get there.
We're going to get to it.
I'm being very
American Horror Story is really odd. I'll wrap up with this, and we were talking about it. It can be like the most charming TV show. In terms, unlike a lot of horror things, you get to know.
Did you watch The Bachelorette, Jerry?
You get to watch these characters over 12 or 13 episodes. So unlike a lot of horror stuff, you get to know the characters, you really get character development.
And then when they gut them, it's devastating.
When somebody has something happen, there are very creepy, horrific scenes in these, but there are also really funny scenes. This one is about a coven of witches, and so what's hilarious is, there's rumors for years, it's not true, but that Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac was a witch. She's not. But she thought it was funny, and so in this season, she plays a witch.
But funny story, the Dixie Chicks who covered Landslide, they were 3 witches. So.
What? The Dixie Chicks?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
I'm joking.
Okay.
That's what George W. Bush would have said.
Oh, okay.
They were big protesters.
I remember that. But, so, you have, these really horrific, violent, terrifying scenes. But then, like, one of the episodes starts off with Stevie Nicks singing.
Really?
As she's walking through, like, the house where this coven is, and all these witches are practicing and doing kind of, like, funny things. I mean, almost think, like, you know, Harry Potter-ish type things. And Stevie Nicks is, like, singing and wishing the girls good luck on this test they're about to take. But then you'll have, like, these flashback scenes that are just, like, horrific. So it really goes back and forth. It's totally not a show for everybody. I think some people would not like, you know, the investment that you have in characters. There's a lot of things that take a lot of payoff. We've kind of noticed, my wife and I have kind of noticed there's a theme to each season. It starts off the first 2 episodes like as much horror stuff as they can throw at you. Like, I mean, I remember the first couple episodes of season 2. You have old creepy asylum, you have genetically mutated people, you have an abduction, you have a serial killer, you have like all this different stuff. And then you start to know the characters and get what's going on. And then like the last couple episodes are usually fairly charming as you're seeing like resolution, and usually there's some level of a happy ending, which is, you know, kind of unusual for a lot of horror movies. But
except for Hocus Pocus. That one had a really happy ending.
Yeah, Hocus Pocus does, and that's one of the little...
Inks the cat. I don't know if
gosh.
you knew. He basically got his life back.
I'm assuming you're making this joke because, like, my little one watches that movie, like, non-stop a lot of the time.
Here's a funny story.
That and Coraline.
Last Halloween. I think Halloween was on a Saturday last year.
Last year it was on a Saturday.
Abby and I got a few movies. I think we watched maybe one of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. I can't remember if that was right before. We had watched Halloween right before. But her favorite movie, one of her favorite movies besides Jaws, is Nightmare Before Christmas, just like your wife, Kristen, loves it. So we watched that. So we had a lighter Halloween. We made some food, gave out candy, didn't dress up. It was very low key, and we watched Hocus Pocus. She had never seen Hocus Pocus. Came out in '93. She was born in '90, so maybe she was a tad younger there.
I saw it in the theater.
I did too.
Yeah.
Up here at the Carmike Cinema in Shelby when it was like the Carmike 5. But I love that movie. I mean, I watched it a ton. We had it recorded on a VHS tape. We'd get those HBO free trials, and I'd put like the VHS tape on like SLP, and it would be this crappiest quality. But
whatever you can watch, record
there was
everything.
one that I had like Hocus Pocus and Howard the Duck and Problem Child on, and like I watched it over and over. And over.
Howard the Duck?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Which I don't know if I should have been watching that, but I think that was the HBO. I was going to say it was the TV version, but it was the HBO version.
Howard the Duck is a terrible movie.
It's a terrible movie, but when you're a kid, I mean, you don't know any better.
People bash something like Suicide Squad now, but just think, we used to have movies like Howard the Duck.
But Abby had never seen it, and you remember the scene where he gets run over by the bus?
Oh, yeah.
And then he inflates himself. She thought he actually died. I'm like, no, Abby. The movie's kind of got some creepy imagery for a Disney movie.
It does. And my little one loves this movie. This, Coraline, and Nightmare Before Christmas are like the kind of she calls them spooky movies. She watches those like all the time, just loves them. Now Ghostbusters is in there.
Man, Sarah Jessica Parker, she's in her prime in that movie.
So,
I gotta say.
Bette Midler. Who's the other? Kathy Najimy, who is the voice of Peggy Hill.
Which I did not know
King
that.
of the Hill. Okay.
I did not know that was the voice. That's crazy.
Yeah. So,
Fun fact.
American Horror Story Coven was pretty good. It's probably my least favorite of all the seasons because I felt like it had really good characters with stories, but there wasn't a real strong overall story arc. But it was still really good.
Well, my wife and I checked out Problem Child.
Did you watch Problem
She
Child?
had never seen this movie, which I did not plan on bringing this up, but thinking of that old SLP VHS tape I had as a kid. Did you ever watch those movies?
Oh, I remember the first two, yeah.
Which I think there's a third one that was crap that I never saw. You know what, the tomato... I remember it being a pretty, not vastly popular, but it was a known movie in the early 90s.
I remember everybody
late
talking
80s.
about it, and for a while calling people Problem Child. Didn't it come out after Home Alone? Because she had kind of the slew of, like...
I think it was right... It came out in the summer of 90, I think, and didn't Home Alone come out, like, around that same time? Here's the thing, though. What do you think? Just ballpark it. Don't look it up. What do you think the tomato meter score was for Problem Child?
Oh, I'm guessing probably... Well, it's an older movie, so it would have had less reviews on there.
Yeah.
So anybody who wanted to write a review of Problem Child was someone who really wanted to write a review of Problem Child.
So they either loved it or hated it.
They really loved it, or they thought enough of this, this 20-plus-year-old movie now to go back and write. I'm guessing 86.
4%.
4%?
4%. And I'm sitting here watching. I loved this movie growing up. Fascinating conversation. I was talking to Evan about it. I told him Abby had never seen Problem Child. We were hanging out this past weekend. He grew up on that movie too. And for those of you that don't know, basically John Ritter adopts the kid from hell. That's the easiest synopsis. But this kid's been mistreated his whole life, never had anybody care about him. John Ritter shows him that people can love him. And, you have a good, happy ending, the end. But what's really weird is, and you can see this if you look it up on Wikipedia, there's a TV version and a theatrical version. And this is one of the few movies in which they add stuff in the TV version. Like, there's a scene with, like, Flight of the Valkyries where he has the... Junior has the remote control helicopter basically chasing the milkman.
Yeah.
And I vividly remember that scene as a kid. But, like, we watched it. It was on HBO. And we watched it the other day. Nothing was going on. And that scene wasn't in there. That's when I started looking up the stuff. Problem Child 2 is pretty good, too. When he gets remarried and they bring the girl into it. I mean, it's cheesy. It really rides that line well of humor for adults, but still being a kid's movie, too.
I vaguely remember this.
Do you remember, like, having fond memories of it? Did you like it?
I probably remember laughing at it. It's not one I remember ever watching. I probably only ever saw it at the theater.
Oh, wow. I don't even know if I saw the first one at the theater. I remember seeing the second one at the theater.
I do remember that one, too. It's interesting that you brought up the TV version, because there's one of our favorite horror movies has a TV version that's infamous.
I know what you're talking about.
Halloween.
Yes. Is that Halloween 2 or the first one?
Halloween original, I believe, has the version that there are certain things that are only in the TV version.
That's really weird.
Well,
why did they do that?
So the TV versions had to be a certain length. So sometimes they would have to cut a movie, but if you had a movie that was like, an hour and 30-minute movie...
Problem Child was an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay, so you have to fill it in so it fills in a TV block. And so, so that there's not that many, they'll have commercials and stuff to fill it in, but they would go back and add deleted scenes into the movie to create a TV cut. So back in like the 80s and stuff, and even the 70s, people would option for TV rights sometimes while movies were being made.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I had to
because that was a big deal. Maybe a big deal for a network to get TV rights to something.
You bring it up being a big deal, and we don't have it anymore because we have, like, FX. We have channels like that, FXX, so, tons of AMC. But it used to be a big deal. Pretty much all the major networks, every couple weeks on Saturday or Sunday nights, especially when it wasn't like football season, they would play basically the TV debut of a major movie.
Yeah.
And I remember, and you may remember this too growing up, it seemed like every Sunday night, ABC would have a new Disney movie they would show. Whether it be Toy Story or... what's the one with, and you probably don't even know the name of this movie. About said The Princess Bride, but what's the one with Anne Hathaway?
Princess Diaries?
Yeah. I remember them playing that over and over. My wife loves that movie.
So that'd be after I was paying that much attention. But I remember as a kid, it was a big deal when a movie would be coming on TV. I mean, remember when Jurassic Park was shown every Thanksgiving?
Yes,
and that was huge.
It was on NBC
and
or something.
I had it on VHS, but there was something like, oh my gosh, they're showing Jurassic Park on Thanksgiving. The other one I remember is they used to show the Indiana Jones movies sometimes on Saturday nights, and I mean that's how I first saw.
What about TBS Bond? Remember that?
Oh my gosh, when you were talking about film recording movies,
yeah.
My parents probably got rid of them at this point. I mean, because I have them all on DVD or Blu-ray now.
Yeah.
But when the 13 Days of Bond, I used to go and try to record.
I wonder if they
everything.
still do that. I don't think they do.
I don't know. I tried to make it a Thanksgiving or a November tradition at our house to watch every James Bond movie in November. My wife is not that big of a fan of many of them, so we've done it once or twice, but now it's kind of restricted to a Bond year only.
You said that you like watching Star Wars at Christmas time,
Yeah.
which is odd that Rogue One's and Force Awakens. They basically position these movies to be holiday releases now with the success of Episode 7. But they used to show the Star Wars trilogy on Christmas and New Year's. Like, I vividly remember it being on, like, USA.
I'm trying to remember, but that doesn't seem really familiar.
They showed the Faces version. The one where Han shot first.
Yeah.
This is the thing, how hard it is to get a hold of that now. And they used to play it on USA.
I know, you used to record that part and watch it over and over.
It's just crazy. I guess, like...
You mean the one where Han shoots only?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Our kids will never know this pain of having to record something on the TV and put it on SLP. And I used to I'd record the dumbest stuff. We would get, like, those weekend Disney channels for free, and I would just hit record. Just record Disney
Oh,
channels.
my gosh. You found out you're getting stars, and, I was, in middle school. I'm recording everything. Remember Daylight, the Sylvester Stallone movie? I remember
I've never seen it.
I recorded Daylight, Metro with Eddie Murphy. All these, everything that they played. Volcano. Remember Volcano?
I remember
Tommy Lee
Volcano.
Jones?
Yeah.
I'm, recording
He
everything.
had Dante's Peak.
Yeah, both of those came out at the same time. Both of those, I like Dante's. I still like Dante's Peak.
Alright, so we got off on a fun tangent. I'm just going to talk about what I plan to talk about as far as checking out. This was actually recommended to me by Andrew Stokes on the original Batman vs. Superman review. So I figured it would be kind of poetic to read it this week that we were reviewing the Ultimate Cut.
Yeah.
And he's not here. This is called The Now. It's one of those Elseworlds graphic novels. It's by Alan Davis and Mark Farmer. It came out in 1998, I believe. I mean, very 90s style art and 90s style storytelling. Very over the top. The premise of this is pretty simple. Somebody's pitting the metahumans against one another. Somebody's pitting the world against metahumans. We don't know who it is. And also, guess what? Here's the big sticker here. No Superman. This is DC if Superman didn't exist. Jerry's like, that's a DC I would like to read.
I did not say that.
I can tell by the look on his face, but
no, I just excited. I see the Doom Patrol on the back.
Yeah, Doom Patrol makes an appearance.
Yeah.
You have everybody, the who's who of DC besides Superman. You have Perry White, and you have Lois. You have Superman supporting characters. Here's the thing: I've not finished this yet. I'll let you borrow it when I finish it.
All right.
Man, they really miss Superman. Like, there's this... Batman murders the Joker in this story.
See Barbara Gordon.
I'm going to spoil some of this, Jerry. I'm sorry, because I know you want to read it.
It's okay.
All right, there's basically a scene where a giant dome goes over Arkham Asylum. Only the Bat family can go in. Batman goes in, battles the Joker. The Joker has these electronic gauntlets he's using to control the facility. Again, very 90s. Mm-hmm. And he murders Dick Grayson and Batgirl.
Wait, is
in
that
cold
not Superman?
blood. Well, I guess maybe Superman should... Thanks for flipping to the back.
You just told me you were ruining something for me, so I just flipping through looking at who was in it.
Well, I didn't know Superman was in this. Maybe...
I didn't look past... Well, I looked past your bookmark a little bit. I see Starro. I see Doom Patrol.
We'll just have to see.
I see it. Is it Calypso in there?
I think so.
Okay.
Now, there's a scene where Batman just murders the Joker, which, again, Batman would never do unless you're in the Zack Snyder universe. You see Superman, regardless of, I guess maybe he shows up. Thanks, Jerry. He's not there to be that moral compass of the DCU. And he's not there to balance out the yang to Batman's yin. It's not there. Mm-hmm. And it is sorely missed. I used to hate Superman. We used to sit here on this podcast, bash Superman. It's so boring. The best thing about him is death of Superman. Jerry still agrees. And then I'm
not agreeing to this all.
And then I read Superman for All Seasons around the time.
Superman. Okay, go ahead.
Have you ever read Superman for All Seasons?
Is that the Jeff Quitely?
No, that's All-Star Superman. It's Tim Sale and Jeff Lowe.
Oh, no, I have not read that.
It's basically Superman's yearbook.
Okay.
That's what it is. fantastic. Made me love the character, appreciate the character. I read it when Man of Steel came out. They released like an updated hardback edition. I'll have to let you borrow it. But those movies have made me I say those movies, the Henry Cavill Superman movies, have made me appreciate Superman. I know this has been something that was there. I guess I never really realized it or just never took it into account or took the time to do so. You know, what makes Superman super isn't his powers, is that he chooses to use his powers for the good of mankind. And he is basically, as Lex Luthor would say, a god. So, we can get into a whole mythological discussion of Superman, which I don't want to do right now. We'll save that for another podcast. The Nell's okay.
Okay.
And I got...
I want to read it. I like the look of the characters.
It's got that classic DC logo
the
with
bullet
the stars.
logo.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a bullet. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
It's supposed to be a bullet. Yeah.
Man, that's what they should use for the DC logos for the Zack Snyder movies. It should just be Batman shooting a gun. It's the intro, and then just the DC bullet logo pops up.
The things with the Zack Snyder movies I do have a hard time with is some of those Batman things.
I also picked up a book called Another Now. It's the DC universe without Batman. So it's the opposite, which I guess Batman shows up like the last 3 pages.
Are you serious?
Yeah, there's a sequel that's called Another Now.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically what would DCU be like without Batman.
Oh, okay.
And what effect would that have on Superman?
Huh.
Which I've actually heard it's better.
Okay.
I don't know what year it came out. I think it may have come out like 2000. It was a little bit more updated art. But I got them. If you're going to get trades, and you checked out this site, let's see, InStockTrades.com. Get them there really cheap. If you order over $50, it's free shipping. They're actually cheaper than Amazon in most cases. Their search engine can be a pain, but if you're a trade reader like Jerry is, like I've become now, just because it's so much as far as time and financially easier.
They look nice on the shelf.
They look nice on the shelf. Yeah, Jerry's trades look good. My friend Paul has like a giant shelf. It's nothing but DC hardbacks, and it looks really nice. So better than having long boxes like molding in your closet, but nothing beats that smell of comics though. Even though that's mold, nothing beats that smell.
That's the smell of the candle I have lit over here is new comic smell.
Oh, okay. All right, Jerry, is there anything else you want to mention that you've been checking out before we move on to Epic News?
No, but I was reading. Marvel is releasing. They're doing the opposite of the DC extended universe. Okay. They're actually releasing a shorter version of Captain America: Civil War.
You're lying.
No.
Of the movie.
Yeah, when Tony and Steve face off, they actually stop fighting earlier in the movie because they realize both of them, their best friend is named James.
Wow. That's great.
Your friend's named James too.
Well, this is a podcast where you can rest assured, as you listen to this podcast, proudly presented by DGWW, Geeks Worldwide Radio, shameless plug there. Okay. You can rest assured, as you listen, that one of these host mothers' name is Martha.
Oh, that's true.
And that will make you really appreciate this podcast. For those of you that don't know, my mom's name literally is Martha.
Your mother's name Martha, too.
I'm the only one that appreciated that line.
I love that line. I actually thought it was really good.
We'll get there.
It should have been moved to a spot. But no, really, I mean, think about it. Captain America's best friend?
Yeah, that's true. James Rhodes, James Buchanan Barnes.
James Bucky Barnes and James Rhodes. What if that happened in Civil War?
Man, that was such a missed opportunity. I would so pay to see
They could do a shorter version of that movie. Civil War was good. Still the best superhero movie of the year, I think.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into
some news.
Some epic news items of the week. Obviously, the big epic news items was the release of the Rogue One trailer. We're going to save that for the end of this news discussion. But let's run through a few things here. Sad news starting out. Kenny Baker, the legendary actor who portrayed R2-D2, was actually in the tin can, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He passed away. He was 80s, wasn't he, Jerry?
I think he was 83.
83. So lived a good long life. What I always admired about him is when he came back for the prequels. when CG was just becoming a real big thing. And even as The Force Awakens, he wanted to be in that R2-D2 outfit. And when they could have just easily melded in, could have been a completely CG effect, could have put anybody in there. This man, I mean, he got a paycheck for it, but, you know, that late in life, I don't know if it's really about the paycheck.
Yeah, I know for, like, the new one, he was the R2-D2 consultant, basically, but...
Now, how did he pass? Was it just old age? Was it?
I think he had a type of cancer. I'm looking. It's just extended illness is what I'm seeing on Wikipedia. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's sad because we're getting to that point where those original Star Wars actors are getting on up there.
He was in some really good movies. A couple I've watched recently. We've been watching Willow lately. Or trying to get my little one to watch Willow, and so I watched Willow the other night. It was really late. I wanted to watch Willow.
Is that the one that has the girl from Big Bang Theory? No, okay.
Willow's the old movie with Warwick Davis and Val Kilmer.
Okay.
Ron Howard directed it.
I thought you were talking about a sitcom that had Amy Farrah Fowler in it. What was the name of that sitcom?
That's Blossom.
Blossom. Well, it's a flower. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So no, Willow. Like he's one of the guys.
Baker's in Blossom. What?
Yeah, Kenny Baker. But he's in Labyrinth. You know, I mean, he played a lot of characters where there was a role for a little person. The Time Bandits is a really cool old movie that he was in. Actually, 81, and I'm trying to remember somebody else was in it too. There's a few people who are Sean Connery's in it. Shelley Duvall, Ian Holm, Bilbo Baggins is in that movie as well. So, but it's a cool movie. So,
I mean,
worth checking out.
You know, usually, unfortunately, when we lose a legendary actor like this or celebrity, unless it's somebody up to the caliber of like a Michael Jackson or something, and this passes in a few days. But this was something that really resonated and hit home for people for about 3 days, which is a long time span in this 24-hour instantaneous news cycle.
You have someone who is a original Star Wars cast member. That's a pretty big deal.
Who went to conventions?
Yes, he has really been involved in fandom and things like that, and so people really love him.
So rest in peace, Kenny Baker. That's sad.
I used to carry a R2-D2 figure in my pocket in middle school for good luck.
It brought you a lot of good luck. You're now a father and a successful podcast host.
I know.
Who runs a successful toy blog.
Thanks to that R2-D2 figure.
Yeah. And that may not have been possible without Kenny Baker and that little tin can. All right, let's move on from that sad news. A little more Star Wars news. John Williams returning to compose Episode 8. I guess I'm to the point where I'm taking that for granted. Again, somebody that's getting older, the most legendary film composer of our lifetime. And so glad. You know, it's a sigh of relief. I hope that he will be around for at least through Episode 9, through this whole Skywalker saga.
So,
But that's great news. It's not Star Wars with... At least when you're talking about the Skywalker saga, because I'm pretty sure he's not going to do the music for Rogue One.
He is not doing the music for Rogue One.
Okay, it's just
somebody else is doing it. But they're they're doing. I think if you've heard some of the stuff, like they didn't use his, he didn't do the music for Rebels. But if you listen to Rebels, it's very inspired. I mean, they use elements of his music in Clone Wars, and it's very inspired by that.
Yeah, it's influenced by that. So it's not like his style has been forgotten. It's
really cool the way that they've taken that and done it, but it's great to have him back for another movie, because Force Awakens had a really strong soundtrack.
I thought so, too. Now, it did get some criticism. I guess it didn't have anything as powerful as... that Imperial March or anything, but I like Kylo Ren's theme.
I like Kylo Ren's theme, yeah. I mean, definitely the last one that, like, on a cue you can remember is Duel of the Fates. I mean, Duel of the Fates was the biggest from the prequels.
Say all you want to about the prequels, but that Duel of the
Fates is quite possibly my favorite piece of Star Wars music ever. Debatable, but it's a really...
that's a high praise.
That's a really good piece of music. That's a very...
Just never forget when those doors open.
Oh my gosh.
Maul just standing there.
Music still get excited, man. That's such a good... You know,
just such a good cue. Match very well with what's on screen. Alright, let's move from some Star Wars stuff to some DC stuff, some DC TV news. We all know Supergirl's coming to the CW. She's going to be a part of the DCW, if you will.
DCW? Is that what they're calling it?
No, that's what I'm calling it.
Okay, well, that's good. Maybe you'll stick.
She's going to be a part of the DCW, and there's going to be a crossover with her and Flash, which there was last year. Mm-hmm. Flash went to basically a different Earth, one of the 52 Earths, and that's how we kind of got Supergirl brought into the discussion of being a part of this and leaving CBS, which was a lot more expensive. It's going to be a lot more manageable and easier for her to interact with these other characters on the CW. But Joss Whedon's coming in to direct a musical episode that's going to be a crossover between the two.
Okay.
They can do some outlandish things with The Flash that they can't do with some of these other shows. They've really established...
Like not a musical version of Arrow?
No. God, no. They can barely pull off a regular version of Arrow. I'm trying so hard. I think it's on season 4. I'm on episode 6 or 7 of season 4. I can barely get through it. It's just so dull. And what they've done with Felicity Smoke's utter mess. But there was just something about that Supergirl Flash crossover. It made you feel like the world was made of cotton candy. You couldn't see, I didn't even watch. That's the only episode of Supergirl I watched last year. And I was smiling the whole time. It was such classic Silver Age DC. You know the classic scene where Superman and Flash, I don't know what comic, it's from multiple comics at this point, where they have a race.
Yeah.
They did that between Supergirl and the Flash, and it was really neat. And Melissa Benoist, who's Supergirl, and Grant Gustin, they both were on Glee together.
Oh, really?
So okay. they have a really good on-screen chemistry and
so
rapport.
They can legitimately sing too.
Oh, exactly.
Okay. Well, then a musical episode doesn't sound like
terrible,
as crazy of an idea as. I still haven't watched either of these shows yet.
The Flash is my favorite piece of superhero television there is. Now, is it the best? No. It's not on the level of the Jessica Jones or Daredevil. It brings me the most joy. It's my favorite. It's kind of like the DCEU. I'm admitting they're not as good as the Marvel movies, but there's parts of the DCEU that probably bring me more joy than the Marvel movies.
Oh, absolutely. Did. Yeah, I get what you mean.
So that's kind of my line of thinking there.
Do you remember the musical episode? I had to pull it up. The musical episode of Batman the Brave and the Bold?
I did not watch Batman the Brave and the Bold.
There was a musical episode where it was a pretty good show, but they had Neil Patrick Harris was on it, and they had a character called the Music Meister, and it was really funny. So with Batman involved in a musical episode, but it worked with The Brave and the Bold.
Musicals are tricky, especially when you're handling beloved characters who aren't typically seen.
The Brave and the Bold, and totally poked fun at that. Of course, it had more the feeling of something like the animated series, Batman animated series, mixed with the 1960s TV show.
Yeah.
Kind of the feeling was kind of in the middle of that. So it worked, but you could still tell Batman wasn't thrilled with it. So it was really funny.
Let's move from the DCW to the DCEU.
DCEU.
Henry Cavill, Instagram, showed that he will be wearing the black outfit.
The regeneration suit.
Which we saw in Man of Steel, that scene with the skulls and Zod when he was getting that vision, having that vision and whatnot. I thought that was a really badass looking suit. There were a few action figures. NECA did a quarter scale of it, and it was part of the movie Masterpiece line.
It's got him a beard.
Yeah, apparently. Well, I think that may be Photoshopped, but the rumor is that he is going to have longer hair. I don't know about a beard.
Makes sense.
I think this is going to be a really cool look. Here's the problem. They're just saying, hey, Superman's alive. Which we know. We all saw that dirt move on that casket. We're not stupid. But, come on. You're like completely pissing on any stakes from a movie that's just getting an Ultimate Edition release that many people are seeing for the first time. They're like, this guy's not dead. No, he's going to be wearing a black suit.
Is there anybody who doesn't know that Superman comes back? I mean, is there anybody?
Especially, most people know death and return of Superman.
Are they thinking that he's going to come back as good? He's going to come back as evil? Based on the visions that Bruce has in Batman vs. Superman?
If they're fighting, if it's the Justice League versus Superman, I hope it's not like the whole third act. I hope it's a short little battle.
Yeah.
They get Clark to come to his senses. We've seen enough of heroes fighting heroes in the comics and on screen.
Yeah.
Especially with this being the first major team up.
Yeah.
You don't
we need to get them together.
Yeah, you don't start off with the MCU with Iron Man fighting Cap, right? You had to build up to that. Actually, they did fight.
Yeah,
they did fight at the beginning. So maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it's just as somebody who loves Civil War, I'm just kind of tired of that whole thing. Heroes fighting heroes. All right, so here is the bad news from the week, aside from Kenny Baker. Apparently, Wonder Woman's a mess. All right, there was a guy. Now, take this in context. This guy was released from Warner Brothers, so obviously he's got ill will. And he basically, and Patty Jenkins, the director, just to preface this, has denied all this, which of course she would. She's the director of the film. But this guy has reason to be this up. I mean, not reason to be this upset, but he has a reason to make Warner's look bad if what he's saying is true. Basically saying that these people should have to, his quote was, they should have to live out of their car and not be paid or fed until they produce a #1 movie, because that's the kind of pressure they put on the staff at Warner Brothers to produce these movies. And the trailer's good, this employee says.
Trailer's
it's unnamed source. Yeah, trailer was fantastic. But the movie sucks. So, I don't care what you rate, Man of Steel, BVS, or Suicide Squad. All three of them had epic trailers. Mm-hmm. They were so well cut. The studio knows how to cut a trailer and market a movie. That's for sure. On iconic imagery. But he's saying that's the same thing here. This movie, as good as it looks, as many people who are as excited to see the first solo female superhero film, whether it's DC or Marvel at this point, it's still the first, and it's the most iconic female hero. If Wonder Woman, if this is rinse, wash, repeat, Wonder Woman comes out, makes $100 million opening weekend, and then takes this massive nosedive. Which Suicide Squad, just for an update, won the weekend, but it was a huge drop-off.
67% or something.
Yeah, it made like 40-something million as opposed to 135
Still beat out every other new opening.
Yeah, it did. It still was over Pete's Dragon and Sausage Party and stuff like that. But if this trend continues, I mean, I just don't know how sustainable this is. Do you buy this?
I mean, the right now, it seems like every movie almost that comes out, people are talking about how big of a mess it is. I mean,
Suicide Squad.
Rogue One has had all these rumors about reshoots. Sure. I'm sure tons of other movies we've talked about recently or have already seen have probably had this same rumor go around that somebody gets mad or wants to drop some publicity and talks about how terrible the movie is, or... You know, I mean, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a very credible thing. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. It very well could be that this movie is, you know, just average or not great. But
the question is...
I mean, let's be honest. This movie comes out next year, right?
Yeah, next
They
summer.
haven't even probably put this movie together yet.
Yeah, I think...
I mean,
maybe
they're probably
still filming. They're not in post-production yet, that's for sure. They haven't put together the final cut.
No, exactly. So how in the world could you I told you yesterday the whole story about that apparently the original cut of Star Wars did not give Fox any, you know, sense of that this was a good movie, and then George Lucas's, well, I think it's at the time it was Marshall Lucas, I think, went back and like re-edited it, and people loved it. So... I mean,
the rest is history. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times movies have troubled productions and something good comes out of it, so...
I just remember last summer, it was about this time, we went out of town. We went to the mountains with some friends. I remember I was with Evan. I remember talking to Evan say, wow, Warner Brothers just screened BVS with Zack Snyder. They loved it. Mm-hmm. Standing ovation from all the people at Warner's. It's like, well, what do you expect? You know, it's Warner Brothers. Just like, what do we expect from Patty Jenkins? If the movie is crap, she's not going to come out and say it. I mean, that makes her look bad. Here's what I wonder. I wonder if the cut Warner Brothers watched was the Ultimate Edition, and they had reason to stand and cheer.
I don't know. This year, Batman vs. Superman is still the 5th highest film of the year.
But that movie,
worldwide.
What did it make? 750 worldwide?
872 so
It didn't
far.
make $1 billion worldwide. Batman vs. Superman should have made $1 billion worldwide. There's no doubt. That's why. Is it a failure? No. Mm-hmm. But considering what it is, and considering how much of a success Civil War was, it let the studio down as far as money made. Whereas I don't think anybody expected Suicide Squad to make $1 billion. But you have the two most recognizable heroes.
I just think everything seems going back to Batman vs. Superman. It was not very kid-friendly at all.
No.
This is not a kid-friendly film.
Whereas Civil War
was still pretty... I mean, you could still bring a younger child who was interested in those characters there. Batman versus Superman, it would be very hard to say, you should bring... It was more like Batman Returns in the sense of...
It wasn't that dark.
It wasn't as twisted, but it was just not the movie that's going to hold a kid's interest.
Yeah, I agree with that. It would be hard.
It wasn't that or a casual, as many casual viewers. It had a very different
with these
approach.
things, so many times, it's a cliche I say over and over, and I almost hate saying it at this point. Where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something here. Now, does that mean that Warner Brothers can't correct it and all the problems are ironed out? You can't judge a movie a year before it's released when there hasn't even been a final cut. So I'm not too worried. I have faith. The best part of Batman vs. Superman was arguably Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman. I have no doubt she can carry a film. My wife's going to be devastated. This movie sucks.
I know. I still remember everybody saying, though, that Guardians of the Galaxy was going to kill Marvel, and Ant-Man was going to kill Marvel, and, those all turned out to be pretty solid
but DC's
movies.
dying. They're not dying. Yeah. If you look at
Suicide Squad now has a higher take, 11-day total, than Guardians of the Galaxy had.
Okay.
Doing better than that movie.
And it's not opening in China either.
It's not opening in China either.
Which it's not going to, which sucks. That kind of puts a ding on what it's able to make. As far as will it kill the DCEU, no. I see all this grand master plan on paper with Shazam and Cyborg and Flash, and I can't help but feel in my gut that these movies are not all going to happen. Whereas everything Marvel lays out,
it is happening. No, I mean, there's no doubt that Marvel's doing a better job at this than DC.
But we're rooting for you, DC. You can catch up.
Wonder Woman had a great trailer. People are excited. I mean, they just have to figure out if there is something wrong, what they need to fix it. Honestly, they need to make these movies shorter. And I'm not usually an advocate for shorter movies. But most of the time, a shorter movie is a tighter, more focused movie.
Suicide Squad went by pretty quick at 2 hours.
Yeah.
For me, it did.
Yeah, I thought Suicide Squad
than BVS.
felt a lot quicker, and and also, maybe that's part of what they need to do.
Man of Steel dragged on. That final battle, I thought it was over. Then he lands the facade again. I'm like, damn, this is awesome, but it's like overwhelming my senses here.
I love Man of Steel.
I do too, man. I love that movie. That's why we have that Mondo poster of it hanging in our living room. It's okay. Is there anything else you want to say about this, or are you ready to move on to Rogue One?
I'm ready to move on to Rogue One.
Alright, so let's go ahead and get into our discussion of what's going to be Jerry's most anticipated movie of 2016. The second trailer for Gareth Edwards' A Star Wars Story, Rogue One.
The world is coming undone. Imperial flags reign across the galaxy.
Can you be trusted without your shackles?
Let's just get this over with, shall we?
We've a mission for you. A major weapons test is imminent. We need to know how to destroy it.
If you're really doing this, I want to help.
Good.
Good. I've been recruiting for the rebellion for a long time.
We destroyed our home. I fight the Empire now. I fear nothing. All is as the Force wills it.
The captain says you are a friend. I will not kill you.
Thanks. There isn't much time. Every day they grow stronger.
There is a 97.6% chance of failure.
He means well.
This is our chance to make a real difference. Are you with me?
All the way.
Jerry, so Rogue One comes out December 16th. You've been so excited for this movie since this past summer. Again, your most anticipated film of 2016. So what did you think of this second trailer?
Oh my gosh. So the first trailer definitely focused more on Felicity Jones' character, Jyn Erso, kind of set up the basic plot of Rogue One.
Which is they're stealing the Death Star plan.
Yeah, it's a group of rebels who get together to steal the plans for the Death Star. Basically, it's telling the story that's told in a line or two in the opening crawl of A New Hope.
Yeah.
This trailer...
It felt like a movie. That's how good it was.
Yeah. It shows more of the characters. So you get to see more of the characters who make up this team and how diverse of a group this is, which is really cool. You have Donnie Yen in there, who's kind of, he's not a Jedi, but I mean, he's definitely a more martial arts driven warrior. He's blind, and he's a fighter. I mean, you have,
it's going to be like Stick in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, you've got Riz Ahmed in there. He's the Bodhi Rook, who's like a former Imperial pilot who now works with the Rebellion.
Is he the black guy? There's a black guy that looks like Bishop from X-Men.
Yeah, I think that's gosh, what's his name? Well, Forrest Whitaker's in there.
But is he doesn't have dreads.
That's not. Yeah, that's not
a different guy.
That's okay. That's oh gosh, what's his name?
It's okay, Jerry. They hadn't even released the toys of these characters. You don't have to know their name.
And according to Hasbro, some of these may not even get toys.
Yeah, I read that.
Oh my gosh! But
that's a different podcast.
Forrest Whitaker as Saul Guerrera. Just seeing him on here was so exciting. I don't know if you watched up to that point in Clone Wars. But
I finished Clone Wars. I finished the whole thing.
He was a character in like Clone Wars, and absolutely one of my favorite story arcs in Clone Wars, where
It's so funny how this new canon really references Clone Wars a lot, like the stuff with Sham Syndulla and stuff. Is it Cham?
Cham, I think it's Cham.
Yeah, Cham Syndulla.
I mean, some of these it's hard to know how to say.
Here's what I took away from this trailer. I read A New Dawn. I read that book. I say I read. It's only like 300 pages. I read 200 pages and quit. I'm really bad about doing that with Star Wars.
I loved A New Dawn.
I thought it was okay. I didn't finish it, so I can't judge it.
Yeah.
That book did an okay to good job of capturing the sense of dread and feelings toward the Empire in the galaxy post, Revenge of the Sith and the rise of Palpatine and Vader and all that. This does an even better job in 2 minutes than that book did for me in 200 pages of showing just this ominous feeling that the Empire, this cloud that they're casting over the galaxy. But I can't help but think, and I wonder if they're going to really hint at this, at least touch on this plot point. There's people that love the Empire because it brought stability to their lives. Mm-hmm. And it's usually, if you look at Star Wars in a basic sense, it's good versus evil. The rebels are the good guy, the Empire's the bad guy. If you're somebody like, especially like Jerry, who's read way more of the new canon stuff than I have, you really understand that there's a lot more to it than that. It's a lot more complicated. So I hope that they hint at that. I definitely got the sense of dread. I wonder if there'll be also a sense of order and stability.
Yeah, I'm curious if the movies will sort of be the ones that gloss over that.
Rebels kind of did that too.
Rebels definitely hints at that. Bloodline, which is the most recent book that's come out, which actually has a mention of Saw Gerrera in it. Even though it takes place years after Return of the Jedi.
Saw Gerrera sounds like a wrestler.
Saw Gerrera?
Yeah.
Saw Gerrera.
Yeah.
His
Bonesaw is ready. Ooh, yeah.
Saw Gerrera is mentioned in it. But, I mean, it kind of has a whole thing about, the First Order is born from Force Awakens, is born out of people who miss the Empire and miss the sense of power and stability that they felt was present that the New Republic hasn't given them.
Such a fascinating story, especially now. You grow up, especially as somebody who was a history major in college, and seeing the rise of these regimes, such as, Mussolini in Italy, fascism, and, totalitarianism and fascism with Adolf Hitler in Germany, and communism, the Red Army, Stalin, all that stuff. You're like, how could anybody ever want this? And you really, obviously the most famous example is Hitler. Things were a mess in Germany, right? Mm-hmm. The economy was in shambles. This guy said, hey, we're going to give you jobs. He restored Germany into being a world power after World War I, and the country was in shambles. And then people had jobs. They were fat and happy, so they kind of looked the other way.
Did he make Germany great again?
That sounds like something that... Actually, he said something to that effect.
Yeah.
He did say that. Which he did... I mean, technically... before the Holocaust, he restored Germany to being a world power.
Yeah.
And I've always said, how could people really fall into that trap toward these evil dictators? When you really study history, you say, oh, it's easy. When things are in shambles, when there's people who want something different, when people feel like they're not getting their fair share, or they're not justly represented by their government, or their country's not represented on the world stage, it's easy to gravitate toward power or totalitarian style government. I'm not trying to get too political on this podcast, but whether you like Donald Trump or not, obviously his campaign's kind of fizzling out now. I think Hillary's up 9%. Hillary's up 9% in the latest Wall Street Journal and NBC poll. Trump is down a little bit. As Jerry makes that cheesy sound effect. But, I mean, you can see in the darkest parts of your heart, even if you don't like Trump, the appeal that I'm going to make America the best no matter what. And that's not the way to be, but as an American, selfishly, you're like, yeah, that's the way it should be. And I think there's a good political commentary that Star Wars could make. Maybe Rogue One was, in production. The story was written right before we had the rise of Trump.
I wish...
But, I mean, there's some tie in there.
Move the film to October.
Yeah. As long as it's not coming out during an NFL game. He wouldn't do the debates during NFL games, he said. Which I appreciate, because I want to watch the debate and NFL games. But, I mean, I'll admit, the presidential debates are a little more important. But... Again, different story, different podcast. But I think Star Wars can really be relevant in this time period to our current time period. Maybe more so than it has, especially with unrest, with Brexit, stuff like that in Britain. And I think it'll be interesting. Because I think the world's at an interesting place. A scary place, kind of, but interesting, historically.
And Rogue One, once again, not knowing that much about it yet since the movie's not out, I mean, it's definitely going to show a different side of this war. Kind of like Rebels. Rebels spends a lot of time on Lothal. So you see one sort of...
Almost too much time.
Well, you sort of see one almost like a back world. It's not one of the big capitals or anything. And so you sort of see like the plight of the people. I mean, some people are really thriving under the Empire. Some people are just being completely, trampled over. And so you kind of see the roots of, some people wanting to keep the status quo, some people wanting to overturn it. And I hope Rogue One explores that. I really like this idea with the Star Wars spin-off films or whatever they're stories or whatever they're calling them. I think it's going to say Star Wars story is the language they're using. That they're really trying to distinguish these from the episodes,
which is good.
Yeah, by really focusing on different genres of filmmaking. Like they've said over and over, this movie is going to be a war film. You know. So it's going to have a very different feel than...
And you don't have war without politics.
Yeah.
So it'll be
and
interesting.
So you're going to have a different feel than your typical Star Wars, which is... I mean, there's Star Wars and there's some war elements in them, but they're typically kind of a space fantasy film, you know, with some sci-fi elements in there. I mean, they're more space fantasy than sci-fi. I think this is going to be a very different thing. Also going into it, I mean, either they're going to have to find creative ways to work these characters into the new canon, or we know that most of these characters are going to die.
Which is what most people seem to be.
Yeah, and that's going to be that's going to be really interesting going and thinking about, like, this whole movie. I mean, that's kind of still my worry about the Rebels cast, is, like, what's going to happen to that cast, because I love those characters. You know, like, I love them so much, and I'm hoping...
I think they'll get a happy ending, and I think that this Rogue One movie allows that, because remember, for so long, so many people thought Star Wars Rebels crew, the crew of the Ghosts, would be the people who steal the Death Star.
It would have been so cool.
So again, dark for Disney XD.
Well, sure. No, it would have been so cool to have them be the ones that got the Death Star plans.
All right, let's talk about the big breath in the room. Darth Vader.
Darth Vader shows back up.
That last shot, turn, the inhale, the exhale, the iconic sound that we all know and love at this point. How much... Well, first of all, what was your reaction when you saw Vader?
I mean, it's pretty cool to see Vader back on the screen during the original trilogy era again. That's pretty exciting.
I agree. How much do you think that he will be in it?
I don't think he's going to be in it.
That's what you get right there. And just that sound alone, most of the people in America and the world know what that means.
I don't think he's going to be in it like a crazy amount.
Will he be in it more than Leto's Joker was in Suicide Squad?
That's actually the first comparison that came to my mind. I could see that being an appropriate amount of time. I mean, think about how much is Vader in A New Hope? I mean, he's in the movie, but, you know, it's one of those things where the presence of a character sometimes means more than the screen time. And he could have he'd still be pretty insignificant.
You think he's the one that, you said they end up dead?
They could, I don't know.
Well, you think so. And I think so, too.
He could certainly finish off a number of them.
I mean, you'd have to think that to add to the sinister... I mean, basically, the lore... One thing, you know, Lords of the Sith was a very good book. I don't know if it was a great book, but just seeing some of the things that Vader did... There's one where... It's been a while since I read it, Jerry, so you may remember it better than me. But he goes into, like, a tribe or something, and he just basically cuts these people down.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see that with Anakin and the Sand People and the Jedi Temple and in the prequels, but... We haven't seen him do a lot of that in the Vader outfit outside of the video games and stuff. So it will be interesting to see him as Darth Vader in the suit, basically doing those type of menacing things.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that's what we'll see. I'm hoping we'll see Vader do something cool. Like, you know, really, I mean, show his power.
Well, he's going to breathe, so that's cool.
Yeah,
so
it is
we
cool.
know that.
I'm hoping we see him do something significant, but not like crazy, like, you know.
And James Earl Jones' voice.
James Earl Jones.
I don't know who's in the suit. Obviously, it's not David Prowse. It's not Hayden Christensen. I don't know who it is exactly.
Because Hayden Christensen was actually in the suit for episode 3, I believe.
Yeah, at the end, he
really was him.
Now, here's the thing that you think we only saw the back. Now, from the back, it looked reminiscent of the Empire suit. From the back. Again, we can hardly tell. This is a vague picture here at the end of this trailer. Do you think it will look... Because on Rebels, the suit favors the New Hope suit. And there is a big difference. Not a big difference, but to Star Wars fans, it is.
There's enough of a difference in terms of the shape of the helmet and in terms of
from a New Hope to Empire.
And the buttons on the chest pad and stuff like that.
Will he have the New Hope suit?
I mean, they would not mess that detail up.
How cool would it be if the front of his helmet was like more samurai-like, like kind of like the Ralph McQuarrie inspired stuff?
I just think this movie really has to be just such a short time before A New Hope. I mean, it really has to be a short period of time. 6 months or less. Oh, yeah. I would argue less than that, considering maybe 6 weeks or less would be more. Yeah, that to me, if I were thinking about when to take place, I would say 6 weeks or less, because those plans have to get right to Leia, and she's trying to get him to, the rebellion. So. How much more excited now are you post this Vader trailer? Is it on par with what you were, or more? Probably a little more excited the more I'm seeing these other characters, and I mean some of the new troop types and stuff that we're seeing are pretty cool. I mean, again, this isn't going to reach Episode 7 Force Awakens levels because it's not some of the same characters. It's not the Skywalker saga. It hadn't been 30 years. Whatever. Well, I guess it wasn't 30 years. 10-something, 12-something years since the last Star Wars movie. But still exciting. Still exciting. So that will be out December 16th. And surely we will have a review of that on the Confirmed Epic podcast. Alright, Jerry, let's go ahead and move into our featured review of the week, which is Zack Snyder's Batman vs. Superman Ultimate Edition.
Men with power obey neither policy nor principle. No one is different. No one is neutral.
If Superman were here, what would you want to say to him?
That my family too had dreams. To look him in his eye and ask him how he decides which lives count and which ones do not.
There's a new kind of mean in him. He is angry and he's hunting.
I didn't kill those men if that's what they think.
This is what makes you such a good reporter. Stuff like this still shocks you.
I'm older now than my father ever was. This may be the only thing I do that matters.
So falls the house of Wayne.
God is all-powerful. He cannot be all good.
The world only makes sense if you force it to.
Men like that words don't stop him. You know what stops him? A fist.
You were never a god. You were never even a man.
That dream is all some people have. It's all that gives them hope.
Now God is good as dead.
Man made a world where standing together is impossible.
We will. We have
to. Again, as we said, there's going to be spoilers, so just as an extra warning, we're going to go ahead and roll the reel forward to spoilers for BVS Ultimate Edition starting now. Jerry, the most polarizing movie of the year, no doubt. Very divisive among fans, amongst critics. Do you think this or Ghostbusters was polarizing? Well, I haven't seen Ghostbusters, so I have to see Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was definitely the most polarizing from the outset. Yeah. I think this conversation... People watched this movie and took really different things away from it. Yeah, the conversation with this carries on from March to and before, basically all of 2016 until today. Ultimate Edition was released, like you said, about probably July 20th, so three and a half weeks ago. Now, we did a 3.5 hour podcast originally, me, you, Andrew, and Nagasicles. We promise it won't be that long. Now, this movie was 3 hours and 2 minutes. So, let's go ahead and run through a few opening questions here, Jerry. All right. Just for those people who didn't listen to our Ultimate Edition review of the regular cut, 3 hours and 39 minutes. So our podcast was longer than the Ultimate Edition cut. Crazy. We were up to like 3 in the morning. That was a long night. It was. Now, thoughts on the theatrical edition. Yeah. Coming out of it, what did you rate it? How did you feel about it? I think I gave it a good and a half. That it was one of the...
obviously, and the biggest thing, and I'll keep bringing this up, is I was very uncomfortable with some of the changes made to Batman. I mean, obviously, having a Batman who's killing people was definitely... That was one of those changes to me that was huge. Like, I was like, okay, that is a really big change. I kind of see where Zack Snyder was going, but considering that, you know, not taking life has been like a huge part of the Batman mythos for years now.
And so many different iterations.
Yes. I mean, it's been one of Batman's, I would say one of his defining traits, defining characteristics. That was a big shocker to me. So I was very upset by that. Trying to put it aside and look at it as a different vision for this universe, I enjoyed the movie. There weren't many scenes I didn't like. I loved most of the scenes. The cinematography was beautiful. The choreography was beautiful. The music score was awesome for this film. Everybody had, you know, very distinct musical cues.
And it was Hans Zimmer who came back from Man of Steel, from the Dark Knight trilogy to do this, along with a guy named Junkie XL. They collaborated on it. But this score is incredible.
Yeah.
Especially Wonder Woman's.
Great scenes that, to me, felt very disconnected. I almost felt like I had to make the connections in there.
And you and I, being... I mean, again, I pretty much like DC and Marvel about equally at this point. But especially being the Batman fans we are, and having come, for myself personally, to appreciate Superman so much more since Man of Steel... As I said, we're able to make these connections. We know what parademons are. Even though it wasn't shown in the original edition, we know who Steppenwolf is, okay? Mm-hmm. We know the mega symbol. We geek out over that stuff. Again, general audiences probably aren't going to do that, but whether you get that stuff, you can connect those dots like Jerry and I and so many other DC fanboys and fangirls, you can't deny iconic imagery. The scene... where they're waiting for the hearing. And it was in the SDCC trailer last year. And Superman comes down to the Capitol building. He's floating in there. I mean, I was watching this again. I got... hairs were standing up on my arm. I had goosebumps. Mm-hmm. These movies... look, I don't know why. I can't tell you why I feel this way. But there's something about the aesthetic that seems so much, and the Dark Knight trilogy even more so, but there's something about these movies too that seems so much more real than the Marvel movies. I'm not saying they're better than the Marvel movies, but the way that they viewed these characters that we know and love in the context of our world, which is odd because it's fictitious cities, whereas Marvel's real world cities... They just, to me, that's the one thing the DCEU does better than the MCU. Yeah. And I enjoyed that. About
there's something I think I can't remember if I said it in our... Did we do a Civil War podcast? We did.
Yeah. We had technical problems. We were doing it online.
Right. I can't remember if I said it during the Civil War podcast or something else, but Marvel's universe is one where you totally can have these characters sitting around, you know, the Avengers Tower... in their regular clothes, doing something that like a common group of people, of family or friends would do. And it works. DC definitely takes a much more mythical view of their characters.
But they've
and it's like every time they appear, there's like a power there to it.
I feel like in these DCEU movies, they've got the mythical view. Mm-hmm. And they've tried to fit that into a real-world context, but they haven't got, like, the mythical feeling of these characters across in the film. I see it. It's there. It looks incredible, but it's not resonating with me the way it does on the page. Mm-hmm. Now, Ultimate Edition, it did. Yeah. Which we're about to get to. I gave it a good and a half. I gave theatrical a good and a half. What did you give? I gave it a great.
Did I give it a good or a good and a half?
I think a good and a half.
Okay.
I think Andrew gave it good. You gave it good
I
and a
thought
half.
I was the lowest.
No, I think Andrew was.
Okay, well, maybe.
I gave it great. Agasicles from DGWW.com gave it a 4 out of 5. He said a great on our scale. Looking back, I would give it the theatrical edition, I'd probably give a strong good. I'm very close to you on that good and a half looking back.
I don't know. I think it's still the movie it was. I mean, I still think I would give it a good and a half. So,
which you haven't watched it the theatrical edition.
Yeah, I started to watch the theatrical edition, but
was that included on the Blu-ray?
I believe it is on there.
It's sitting right here. I don't know if it is. It just says.
Let me see it. I'm pretty sure it's on here.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the Ultimate Edition of Batman vs Superman, the 3-hour cut. Now, I kind of got it, not scene by scene, but kind of in a chronological way here, and we'll hit different characters and different themes. Let's start with the opening. Mm-hmm. I think you and I both agree, as cool, again, as some of the imagery was in that opening scene in Africa, something was off there. That of all the parts of the movie that you could argue were edited poorly, that may have been the most egregious example.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'll never forget. I'm sitting there watching this movie, theatrical edition. They just plop Lois down in front of this warlord. Yeah. Are you a terrorist? Well, no shit. I guess he is.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it felt like she was deadpan. She has no emotion in this basically life-threatening situation. But, wow, they really make up for a lot of the shortcomings in the Ultimate Edition. Talk about it a little bit.
Watching the Ultimate Edition, one of the problems that you realize is the Ultimate Edition doesn't add more to the fight scenes, which is kind of what I always expected, that like the Batman-Superman fight and everything would be longer and a bit more violent. It doesn't really add anything to any action scenes. It really adds in a lot of plot elements that truly were cut out of the original film.
And character development.
And so, one of the major things in the original film, just for me, is that you have Batman doing an investigation. You have Superman being questioned to determine whether he's a hero or not. You have Lex Luthor planning how to kill Superman. And then all these things just kind of come together, and
they just happen in the original.
This scene in, I think it's called Nairobi in this film, where Lois and Jimmy Olsen are, and of course Jimmy Olsen's introduced here. He's killed off right away.
We're told after the fact in the theatrical edition, oh yeah, that was Jimmy Olsen, which came
At least
across
in this one,
in poor
you
taste.
find out early on.
Yeah.
You find one of the major plot elements here, which is that Superman is basically set up in this incident. Lois is over in Nairobi, Africa, interviewing a terrorist leader, or a leader of a rebellion, who, you know, once again, the definition if he's a terrorist or not is...
To some, he's a revolutionary.
Yeah, it's kind of supposed to be this mixed ground, but it turns out that from that point already, that this is being played. That there's a U.S. government plot going on here, but there's also a plot by Lex Luthor to
basically make Superman look bad.
Yeah,
to make sure he is the one held responsible for the collateral damage, that he is basically almost ensuring that's going to happen.
You initially think these guys in the regular cut, you think these guys are working for, you know, the terrorists.
Yeah.
But it turns out they're working for Luthor.
He contracted these people.
And they burn the bodies in the Ultimate Edition of all of these people that they kill, which you don't see in the regular edition, but it comes up later in the Ultimate Edition. Well, no wonder they burned them, because they're trying to blame that Superman did this with his heat vision.
Yeah.
Because if they burn the bodies, they can just, and have people lie. There's no way to argue that Superman didn't kill these people.
Here's my question for you, and you could probably answer this. I guess it's something I'm not putting together in my brain. How does Superman know Lois is in danger there? Because he's not tracking her. Mm-hmm. He's not. I mean, is he just there hanging out, kind of do they? I'm trying to remember how this went in the Ultimate Edition, because I broke this up. I watched it like 3 different hours.
He sort of just shows up in the Ultimate Edition.
Yeah, he just shows up.
Sorry, in the regular.
But doesn't the government or something like summon him in the Ultimate Edition?
There does seem to be that he is doing what he thinks is right, and he is involved in some way.
I just wonder to what extent. That, again, wasn't even fleshed out in the Ultimate Edition, because what you have these basically undercover U.S. officers who are trying to get to Lois. Mm-hmm. They're in communication with the Pentagon or somebody, and they're trying to get there. They're like, no, we're going to send in a drone. Then you see a drone fly over, and then, boom, you see Superman.
Yeah.
Now, did the government contact Superman? I was under the impression the government didn't trust their men to get there in time, so they sent the drone. Superman's not a pawn of the government in this situation.
I sort of figured that, Superman was keeping an eye on Lois. Regardless, he knew she was going to dangerous places and doing dangerous things. And
he's Superman.
He's Superman.
He's young and in love, Superman.
Yeah, so somehow he's keeping tab. Making sure she's okay. Whether that's he quickly flew over or he was listening. I don't know.
But I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm just asking you: was that was not addressed?
I don't think it was addressed. Still, but okay. Obviously, it seemed like there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of radio chatter about problems. People had just been killed. Remember, Jimmy Olsen is killed before long. In the time of the movie, Jimmy Olsen is killed a good time before Lois is taken back by the terrorists to interview him. So somehow Superman gets word of these things, that things have gone south, and the terrorist
takes Lois,
into
this compound, and then basically the contracted killers of Luthor kill everybody else.
Burn the bodies.
This revolutionary's in there. And then Superman shows up, cool scene, flies in. Basically, I think he flies through the drone.
Yeah, he destroys the drone.
Which is cool. And then this scene goes on about 10 minutes in the regular edition, maybe 8 minutes. It's like 18 minutes.
Yeah, it's a longer scene, but it adds a lot more to where this plot is going. Because so much of the Superman, the hearings that take place in both versions
are over this incident.
And when you don't have the full incident there, the hearings make a lot less sense.
Yeah.
Why? What did he do? He saved Lois Lane and maybe killed a terrorist. You find out they think he did a lot more.
Here's the thing, too. This really ties back to a complaint many people have with Man of Steel, was the collateral damage. And here, even though he's not responsible for it, he's set up for it. A major plot point is this, I don't know her name, she's an African lady who loses family members in that incident. Mm-hmm. And she's basically blackmailed by Luthor to lie in front of the Senate hearing and say Superman did this, although she did not see this with Superman do this with her own 2 eyes. Luthor is basically blackmailing her. And there's also a scene right before the hearing where it shows the lady going to Finch, Senator Finch.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actress's name.
Oh,
She's
gosh.
pretty famous.
Holly Hunter.
Holly Hunter, yeah. Going to Holly Hunter's character's office before the hearing and saying this is all a setup. Mm-hmm. And then she gets killed. All this is left out of the regular edition. That character, that opening scene, you have that opening scene and the Senate hearings and the destruction at the Capitol and this whole side character all tied together in this Ultimate Edition. Mm-hmm. And that is something that basically defines the first 2/3 of this film. Not only that, we see Lois, and you and I were talking about this, her investigative skills.
Yeah.
Basically getting to the bottom of what really happened here, who was tracking her. Because remember, she meets the general in Washington in the theatrical edition, and half the stuff they're saying to each other don't make much sense. Mm-hmm. Now it does. And she's cooperating. That's where I'm going to let you hop in.
Yeah.
With Jenna Malone, who works for Star Labs.
Yeah.
And they're basically trying to get, she's having her run tests on the tracker and basically trace this back to the U.S. government and to Lex Luthor, because the government's involved here and Luthor's involved. A lot of moving parts.
I mean, a lot of the things here develop those characters in the plot. I mean, Lois is... You have a lot more of Lois investigating this, that knowing that something doesn't sit right with her. Not just about Superman being blamed, but about, like, the weapons that were used and why the U.S. government seemed to be involved in this incident. The bullet that was lodged in one of her journals or her notebook or something she took with her.
Which was a big deal. And even in theatrical, you see her remove that bullet.
Her working with Jenna Malone's character, who is not Barbara Gordon, as everybody seemed to say before this movie came out. I heard everywhere this was Barbara Gordon.
Me too.
It's totally not Barbara Gordon. The end credits, they never call her Barbara Gordon. The end credits lister is another character. I don't remember who it was, but it wasn't Barbara Gordon. So, anyways, they keep having these elements of Lois investigating and continuing to look into this. And so you see a lot of her character and her, her tenacity as a reporter and how she's getting to the bottom of this.
And here's the thing. You basically have... First of all, I was somebody who wasn't a big fan of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. I thought it came off a little Jim Carrey, Riddler in some ways. He definitely tried to chew the scenery. But in this version, his basically criminal mastermind, even if it is a little almost kind of Adam West Batman style criminal mastermind where a lot of moving pieces have to go right, it really makes him a better bad guy. Mm-hmm. Because here, Luthor, he's playing Superman through the African lady, basically baiting him in to that Capitol hearing to testify. And then you have Luthor playing Batman through Bruce through his employee at Wayne Manor, the guy who loses his legs.
Wayne Enterprises.
What did I say?
Wayne Manor.
Sorry. Wayne Enterprises, Wayne Industries, whatever it is. Basically, the guy who lost his legs in the beginning of the film, Lex is manipulating Batman through him. And you have these things that collide at this Senate hearing. Now, the Senate hearing, I think, is now my favorite scene of this whole movie. Iconic imagery. Just, I don't know, it's a breathtaking scene. I've already touched on that. But you get there. Now, a big thing is, why did Superman not scan the building in the theatrical edition? Why did he not see the bomb?
Yeah, a bomb goes off in, 20 feet from Superman? Superman has no idea.
And he, later in a conversation with Lois, says, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason. That reason, the wheelchair was lined with
lead.
Which we all know, anybody that knows Superman... He can't see through lead. Kryptonite is usually kept in lead until, Luthor or Batman or whoever wants to expose Superman to it. So this makes Lex look like a better criminal mastermind. And it explains why Superman didn't see it.
Yes, Lex is already learning the weaknesses about these characters. And, it just shows he does know more than he lets on.
Yeah.
He knows more than just, that who Superman's family is and Lois being...
Which I want to get back to that.
Okay.
I just want to geek out one more second. This Capitol scene, one thing we don't see, and I cannot believe they left this out in the original, after this destruction in which Superman was made to look like the guy who blew up the Capitol, he is out there saving people, helping people, being Superman, being heroic. How do you freaking leave that out of the theatrical?
There are some good scenes in this movie of Superman doing things that are just plain heroic.
Yeah.
Especially the factory fire at the Day of the Dead event in somewhere in South America, Mexico. That is such a good scene.
That is.
That and this all the stuff at the Capitol where he's still rescuing people and helping people. Continues to build up his
character. He is shunned, hated, blamed, but he's being Superman. He is helping people who, at this point, borderline are starting to hate him. They're starting to play into Lex Luthor's narrative. There's still a problem with Lex Luthor. We know he gets access to the Kryptonian ship. We know that Darkseid, through Steppenwolf, through 3 mother boxes, which is shown here, which is a famous deleted scene now that they released right after the movie came out, he gives Lex a lot of this knowledge. So I'm willing to forgive how did Lex know some of this stuff. However, he knows a lot of this stuff before he ever has access to the Kryptonian ship, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's the part I'm not buying.
There's still an element of Lex. Yeah, there's still an element of what I guess the question is, what did Lex know and when did he know it? The timeline here, anything after access to the ship, I can forgive. Anything before, I can't. Because Lex is smart. Is he smart enough to figure out who Bruce Wayne's Batman too? I don't know. It seems like it. Because, I mean, Bruce is specifically, and they make a thing about he's specifically invited to, the party that Superman's at, that Clark Kent's at, or Clark is specifically requested to come cover that party and the event for the library that Lex holds.
Yeah.
So, I think there was a lot more things in here. I'm not going to say it clarifies Lex's plot, but there's a lot more elements about Lex's father, him being the Lex in front of the core, that clarify Lex's motivations, about how much he, sort of resents his father, and this is his chance.
That drives his dislike for Superman, because he, I think whether he wants to admit it or not, views Superman as a god, and you have the famous line, if God can be all-powerful, he can't be all-knowing. If God's all-knowing, he can't be all-powerful.
All good.
Okay,
yeah.
Well... And that's a big theme of Lex's whole, core motivation.
Yeah.
So, or all good, he cannot be all powerful. If he's all powerful, he cannot be all good. That's how the saying goes. Now, you do have Lex pushing them toward one another, but you also have them developing their own rivalry, because you have Clark, who, for whatever reason, is supposed to be covering the Gotham football team, who just got beat 58-0, which they felt the need to show that. The cops watching that, I don't know if they really needed to add that. But anyway, he goes to Gotham. Cool scene where he gets on the ship, goes across the harbor, and you see how he disagrees with Batman ideologically. Especially, as you said, this Batman.
Yeah.
And he goes and talks to somebody who lost their life in prison, right? Because they had the Bat brand.
Yeah. That you find out that, with Batman branding people, it's somehow a death sentence, and they don't quite explain what it is, but the cops seem to be involved too, because, one of the scenes you can see that one of the cops is holding a bat.
Yeah.
Like a baseball bat that has a bat symbol
Wasn't
on
that
it.
like a cartoon that somebody had drew, or was that... I remember there was a political almost cartoon.
There's something there, yeah, but, it seems that, once again, that Batman is really causing more things. There's some of this causing more, really causing a lot of death and stuff, and...
Something happened to put this Batman over the edge. I'm guessing it's the death of Robin.
I'm really curious to see how they... I'm really curious to see two things with DCEU, is how this Batman got to where he is now, and if they're going to bring him out of that.
I think that would be great redemption.
That would be a good element for Justice League. And I feel like it's going in that direction with some of the things that Batman says or Bruce says at the end of this movie. But I think Clark gets a lot more time to be a reporter as well in this. And through him seeing, people talking about their opinions on Batman in some of the areas of town, you can see Clark sort of developing more of this, feeling that Batman is not doing good. Batman is just ruining lives and preying on people.
Exactly. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Kent family, specifically Martha and Clark Kent. One of my favorite scenes, and I said this in the theatrical edition, is right before he goes to fight Batman. He goes to his farm, talks to his mom, his family's farm. And, you know, she's basically like, you don't have to be anything. You're choosing to do this. Again, hinting at what makes Superman such an iconic hero. That scene's even better here. And to me, you know, one of the most cringe-worthy, which I didn't hate it. Again, my mom's name is Martha, too. Martha Bell. Love you, Mom. My thing here is, like, that was so pan. They stopped fighting because Martha, both their mothers' names are Martha. Now...
Well, they weren't fighting. Batman was getting ready to kill Superman.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
that's true.
Superman
the fight was
down,
over.
Superman is down and defeated and about ready to die. So it steadies Batman's hand. And with the whole theme of this movie, I mean, kind of being men who are somehow living in the shadow of their parents in some way, or the parents affecting. I mean, Superman is still the man he is because of what his parents instilled in him. Luthor is the man he is because of what his parents have done to him.
Well, his dad.
Yeah, his dad, at least. And Bruce is who he is because of the absence of his parents.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a major role there. So, it does make sense that, I mean, for Batman and the way they've depicted him in this movie, I think that sort of line that Superman has a mother named Martha would mean more to Bruce than the average person. I mean, I think it would have a more significant effect on him. I mean, this is clearly a very damaged Batman.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he's 20 years in Gotham, as he tells Alfred, which Alfred gets a lot more to do here, which we can talk about too. But I want to get back to Martha Kent. They show a lot more of her here, which makes the kidnapping more effective. The scene that really stuck with me, it was small, but I thought it was short and sweet, is Clark's troubled by how people view him. Yeah. He can't sleep. He calls his mom. We've all been there. I've been there. You know, and Lex hints at this. You know, he says, when they confront each other on the roof, he's like, Lois is safe and sound. He's like, no. The one woman that all boys love the most. Their mom. And mothers are a big theme in this, like it or not. So he calls and he's like, what would Dad do? Of course, sadly, Jonathan got swept up in the tornado in the first film. And later on, you have that scene. And this scene was panned. This kind of pissed me off because I thought it was unfair criticism. That scene where Clark goes hiking to clear his mind. Now, I don't know, it looks like he's freaking hiking Everest, but he's Superman.
It does,
right?
yeah. Because in this movie, they kind of make a reference that, like, wait, what are you doing on your own? You know, you're gonna die. And
he's like Superman.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know that.
And he gets to the top of the mountain, and you know, you have the whole story about the farm, and it's just like, you and I often talk about how we both teared up in Man of Steel.
Oh, multiple times.
I was watching this movie, Home Alone, yesterday when Abby was at work, like 1 in the afternoon, eating lunch. I was in my second hour at this point. And he goes up to the top of the mountain, and Jonathan tells Clark, I miss you, son. That's like the first thing or last thing he says to him. I can't remember. Maybe it was the last thing. And everybody was hating this. You know, how many people who's lost a loved one, you know, envisions a potential conversation with that person if they were here to talk about what they were going through? Doesn't mean it's real. Yeah. You may have this imagery in your head. It doesn't mean it's real. To me, that's what the movie was showing. And I thought it was utter bullcrap when people, he's talking to his dead dad. His dead dad's a lot. What was the problem people had with that, Jerry? This is people hating.
I think it's a good scene. I mean, once again, it's Superman. It's a way of visualizing him wrestling with what's going on inside of him. You know? Yeah. It's a way to visualize it rather than him just having a scene where he's sitting there and, you know, you're hearing two voices in his head, or having a scene where there's two Supermans talking to each other. This is a great way of visualizing that because, once again, I mean, he's still, you know, the man he is because of the values and morals that Jonathan Kent instilled in him.
Exactly. And you know, loved ones can die, but they don't really die if their legacy and values are instilled in their kids and grandkids, and they can carry those on throughout society. But that's getting philosophical. All right, Luther Darkseid connection we talked about. They insert the Steppenwolf scene. Don't look too much like a Steppenwolf that I have seen in any comic.
Yeah, I honestly, I have read all of the New Gods, the Jack Kirby omnibus editions and stuff. I would have no clue who this was had I not heard about this scene. I really would have been confused.
You think he'll look like that in Justice League? Surely not. Surely that's like an alternate.
Yeah, I sort of felt like this was a...
Please, God, don't let him be a giant CG monster in Justice League.
No,
Have an actor,
I sort
please.
of felt that this was supposed to be like some sort of just a presence or something versus being the actual character. Like just the way he communicates, like just a form or something.
All right, you have here Mercy Graves. Explain.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to bring up Mercy Graves had a little bit more to do in this movie. That's Luther's. I don't know what you call her.
Was she not Korean? I thought she was like South Korean.
I don't know. She is played by Tao Akamoto. I think what's interesting is in this movie you get a little bit more of an idea that Luther does have feelings for her. Like there's a couple scenes that are almost tender between them. Not like a romantic scene.
How can she be that much of a love interest when he basically sacrifices
her? And I think that establishes a bit of Luther's character. There seems to be some element there in this movie that at least she's fond of him, and he seems to be, not turning down romantic advances or something. So I think it makes it all the more heartbreaking when you realize she's in there by herself in the hearing and sees Luther's empty chair and starts to have an idea as what's about to happen. I think
just as Holly Hunter does, kind of at the same time. They got Grandma's old peach tea there.
Was it Granny's or was it Auntie's?
It was Granny's.
Granny's peach tea. So one of the things I did want to mention about Mercy Graves, though, is we made a big deal on the Suicide Squad podcast about this being... about Suicide Squad being the first appearance of Harley Quinn on on film. This is the first appearance of Mercy Graves in a movie. She was in the regular edition as well. She was a character that was created for Superman, the animated series.
Which I did not know, because I watched it off and on.
Yeah.
Not like I did Batman.
She definitely was not a Harley Quinn level character who rose to that level of popularity. Yeah. But it's just kind of interesting. Here's another character that was born out of the animated series who has now made their way to the film universe.
That's an interesting little nugget there. I like the ending, how they extended the reaction of the country to Superman's death.
Yes.
And they really paralleled it. Maybe it was a bit overt. Maybe this is why they left it out to JFK's assassination, because you don't realize what you got till it's gone, maybe. Somebody keeping the peace, and you maybe didn't realize that. Even though in this case he may have been just a deterrent. When Perry is printing the newspapers, and it kind of takes you through the offices of the Daily Planet, you see the JFK shot in Dallas, which is, obviously that's intentional. They show like coffee shops and the streets and cubicles across Metropolis and other places. And basically you see that this was to the equivalent of a head of state being killed. You hear your grandparents talk about, or your parents talk about, when Kennedy was shot, how everything, for us that was 9/11 was kind of like this, how everything just stopped. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we have not had to see an assassination of a head of state. Hopefully we never will in our lifetime, no matter what your political view is, but they really paralleled that nicely, and they really showed me an appreciation in this universe of the Man of Steel. Mm-hmm. There's one thing, you see basically the state funeral, you see the monument, the theatrical cut. Those are big, grandiose, cool things, good imagery that plays to the senses, but to see how people are not at work. Basically, the world shut down in mourning, almost to the level of like a Princess Diana. Mm-hmm. You remember that as a kid. We're Americans, and everything kind of stopped for like 2 or 3 days there. And they really did a good job with that, and I enjoyed that element of it, even though we all know Superman's coming back. And I always loved the idea of the dual funerals.
Yeah, the kind of the juxtaposition there of Clark's, small family funeral versus, where Mom's like, well, I got to go pay the funeral director.
Which they didn't include in the original.
Nope, and they say that someone an anonymous donor has paid for it.
We all know it's Bruce.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, too, about that. Unlike Batman, Bruce is Batman. Bruce is a secret identity. Mm-hmm. Superman's Clark, through and through. He chooses to be Superman because it's the right thing to do. And that scene really hinted at that. And you hear Wonder Woman say they only know how to honor him as a soldier. But that's not what Clark Kent is. He's a good guy doing the right thing because he was brought up the right way. Mm-hmm. And that juxtaposition, as you said so well, really plays toward that.
Also, you see, if you look in the newspaper, you see that they address that Clark was killed reporting.
But that was in the theatrical.
Was it in the theatrical?
Yeah,
I didn't remember. I didn't remember that part. Okay, so let's get into some final thoughts here. Why was this version not released? You think it was just time? I mean, you had little things. I failed to mention this. Like, Lois goes to that Wally guy's house, and he had just bought groceries. Yeah, and she comments, like, he didn't expect to die.
Exactly.
So,
why was this not the version we saw? Or at least some of these scenes, like, oh, lead, he can't see. Yeah. Like, how are those moments left out? Who dropped the ball?
I don't have an answer as to who dropped the ball. My guess is everything that was cut out was just trying to streamline this movie, but it has a fairly intricate plot. You don't have to say it's a good plot or a great plot, but it has a fairly intricate plot with a lot of moving pieces. And when you go to try to cut stuff out of that kind of plot, you're inevitably leaving lots of gaps and lots of holes. So I think that was why, though, why was this the movie that wasn't released? It's too long.
Yeah.
It's long, and it has really long spaces between action sequences.
Yeah.
It's
and they can't cut from the fight. Yeah. They just can't.
I mean, I hate to be, and I don't mean this as a criticism of the Marvel movies, but it's like the antithesis of the Marvel films.
Which is what I hope DC will remain. I like having them having their own brand.
But in terms of, like, pacing, like, the Marvel films typically, move along. This was like...
It doesn't meander.
Build,
Builds, yeah.
Yeah, build, But, I mean, I would say it meanders a little bit. And one of the things I was thinking as I was watching this Ultimate Edition was... This probably would have fared, a plot like this, better as a TV season.
Yeah, you posed the question.
As one of those Netflix seasons, it reminded me, if you took this movie and stretched it out, I could see this pacing being more akin to something like a season of Daredevil or Jessica Jones than your standard superhero film.
Which it would have never been, just caused the money to be made.
Sure.
The title alone.
But
yeah, no, it makes sense.
In terms of what story they're trying to tell...
I have some advice. If you've listened this far and you hadn't watched it, watch it in increments. Find stopping points about every hour or so and break it up. Because it is a lot for one sitting. Yeah. I could do it, but as an adult, it's hard to sit aside 3 hours of an afternoon.
We did it in 2 sittings, and that was because we started pretty late at night after the little one was in bed. So,
do you think WB trusts his directors? Do you think if it was Snyder's call that this would have been the version released? I don't think WB trusts their directors, and I think that's a major, major problem.
Yeah, you wonder how much of these movies are made in editing. Like how much editing is removed from the directors. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have a good answer for that either, but
here's the thing though. Marvel picks outside of Joss Whedon, which he left because of this. Marvel, I won't say yes men and yes women. They pick directors they can control. DC is picking bigger directors as far as David Ayers is a huge director. You know, I forgot the police movie he directed that was a pretty big hit. Just, I'm blanking.
End of Watch.
End of Watch, yeah.
Wrote Training Day.
Yeah, wrote Training Day. These are bigger directors than, you know, Ken Taylor. Not Ken Taylor. Oh, my God. What's the guy that directed Thor? Is it
Kenneth Branagh?
Yeah.
Kenneth Branagh.
He's pretty big name.
He's pretty well known.
Yeah, I just feel like
more as an actor than a director.
But Marvel has better control over their directors and writers and editors. The mission is laid out what they want. We've said many times it's very formulaic. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think directors are trying to give you their own take and tone on these characters, and that's what DC and Warner's are saying they want, but when they get it, that's not what they want. Does that make sense?
From some of the things I've read, that was absolutely kind of Warner Brothers' stance for years, is they picked directors who they thought were going to deliver sort of a unique product. They picked directors who had a unique visual style or kind of their own take on it. I mean, even so far as a couple years ago, I mean, Christopher Nolan had and of course, he had a lot of control over that project. But at the time, I mean, the results spoke for itself. I mean, it did really well, and he continued to do that. But now, when you're trying to have so many moving pieces and other people, you know, are going to be taking up the work that you've done, it gets a little bit more tricky.
It does. I think that Warner's has to they can't have their cake and eat it too. Either they let these directors give their take and their, you know, iconic visions of the stories of these characters that we all know and love, or they hire people who they can have more influence over and basically give them a core message. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't
Makes
do
sense.
both. Is the hate for this film justified? Had this version been released, do you think it would have been as hated?
I think if this version of Justified, I mean, once again, people would have complained about the length of it, definitely.
It would have just been a different type of hate and dislike. Yeah. But still the same level, you think?
I mean, I think it's still a polarizing film. It's not a film, and I don't say this I'm not trying to say this in a pretentious way, it's just not a film made for everybody. You know, I mean, sometimes there's a movie you go and watch, and you're like, I really like this movie, but it's not the kind of movie I'd put on if I had, like, a big group of people over.
Yeah. If you and I were together, we would watch this.
Yeah. But if I had, 12 or 15 people over for a, movie night...
It'd be a lot easier to play Avengers.
It'd be a lot easier to play Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy than it would to pick out Batman versus Superman.
I agree.
So...
I agree. I think that critically... the score would have been higher on Rotten Tomatoes.
Definitely for this version.
For the Ultimate Edition, it would have been critically at least more well received. I don't know if it would have been overwhelming positivity. I think the fan reaction would have been similar. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily fan reaction. Maybe a better way to put it is general public reaction. All right, yes or no question. DC Universe, is it going to work long term? DCEU, is it salvageable?
I mean, I'm not sure that they've done anything that's killed any of these characters yet in terms of...
Except for Superman, they killed him.
Well, in terms of people liking them. I mean, if Justice League is a good, entertaining movie, if Wonder Woman is a good, entertaining movie, people will jump into it, I'm not sure people are seeing these as connected yet as the Marvel movies.
These characters are so big, so iconic, so mythological, that they're always going to be front-loaded. People are going to churn out to see the first time Justice League's on screen, to see the first time Wonder Woman is going to be on screen. Will they have staying power? That's the question. None. I think Man of Steel's had the most staying power as far as not long-term being a huge box office success, but it was the most consistent. Mm-hmm. I think Wonder Woman and Justice League need to be consistent.
Yeah, Justice League and Wonder Woman, though, are really the test. But, I mean, Suicide Squad, let's talk about that for a second, had a big drop-off at the box office, but still stayed number one.
$43 million.
This is not typically, August at this point is not usually a great time for movies. It's still doing okay.
It'll be interesting to see if it keeps up week 3. I don't think there's anything too big coming out, so it's very possible.
So, and I mean, it still seems to be doing fairly well. You know, not great, but still.
This drop's not as bad as Batman versus Superman, so at least they're trending upward.
Yeah, it's still doing pretty well. It still seems to have a fan base.
I agree. All right. Let's do our re-rating.
Okay.
Originally, theatrically, you said a good and a half.
I think I said a good and a half.
I said a great.
Yeah.
Okay, if you had to re-rate this based on the Ultimate Edition, what would you rate it?
I think at this point with the Ultimate Edition, I would have given it a great. Like a solid great.
Solid great.
Yeah.
I'm going to confirm this epic. I can't believe I'm saying it. I'm going to take a lot of hell, particularly from Andrew Stokes. But sitting there and just seeing the Kent family moments fleshed out, seeing the plot holes covered, seeing the iconic imagery once again. I may regret this. This tape may be played back. But as I watched it the first viewing, if that's what I would have seen in theaters, I would have been blown away. I wasn't blown away because I knew, more than 2/3 of the movie what I was going to see. Had this been the first thing that I would have saw, I would have been blown away. As a DC fan, I would have been floored. I still want to see how Batman got to this point. That's my biggest question after the Ultimate Edition, after Suicide Squad. Why is he this awful, not awful, but more ruthless version of Batman? My only answer is death of Robin. And we need to see that alluded to in a flashback or at some point. And I never really thought about it that way. I hope we see his redemption story. I think that will do one thing to push the DCEU in the right direction.
I would give this movie, like I said, a solid great. It's not a infinitely rewatchable movie.
No, I don't want to watch it again now.
I couldn't see. I'm interested to watch it again in the near future. It's not one I could see myself watching over and over and over again. And I still feel that while this movie answers, the Ultimate Edition addresses a lot of the plot holes, it also still highlights that a big problem with this movie is still that the plot is not real connected. Like, it doesn't, if you watch this movie, it doesn't feel like there's a driving force or a mystery that everybody's working towards. You're getting that, but it's coming from too many angles and too many different things. I mean, it really feels like a film
more streamlined.
I think streamlined would have been better, not less dense, not, the length doesn't have to be different, but a more streamlined film really could have made this a stronger film.
Now, am I saying this is as good as movie as Captain America Civil War? No. When I give it this epic rating, just let me preface this, as far as my view of these characters that I know and love dearly, I thought this was a just, worthy interpretation of them. And I owe Zack Snyder an apology. If this was his cut of the film, I don't see how you can be mad at that guy at this point. I'm going to leave it at that.
I still don't know why he has Batman killing people. I think the branding was enough.
If that is answered, I agree. I don't like Batman killing people, but if this answered, it will, retroactively make that more acceptable.
Yes, if there is a good explanation and a good resolution in a future film, I could deal with that as an interesting alternate take on Batman.
Yeah.
And it could be part of a storyline.
Well, you deal with the Tim Burton version as an alternate take on Batman.
Oh, no, I do too. I do too. Just at the Tim Burton version, Tim Burton is... I mean, I like those movies. Tim Burton is very overt that he'd pretty much never read a comic book in preparation for those films.
Yeah.
Tim Burton was pretty overt about that. And Zack Snyder seems to be very thoroughly versed on comic book lore and things like that.
Just watch The Watchmen.
And I'm really curious about why he chose to go that direction. Because that's a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
I have a way easier time with Superman killing another near godlike being who there is no way to stop or jail or do anything about than I do Batman running around blowing things up and killing not random people, but random thugs.
I don't think the justification here is like Tim Burton. I've never read a comic book. I don't really understand the core of the character. I think we'll see it. This has been too much of a red herring, this whole Jason Todd. I'm assuming it is. Maybe it's Dick Grayson. Who knows? Yeah. We're going to see something that eludes that. We may have to wait to the solo Batman movie. We may have to wait to Justice League Part 2. But I think we're going to see it. So, Jerry, at the risk of this becoming an ultimate edition of the Confirmed Epic podcast, let's go ahead and wrap things up. Again, I would rate it epic. You said a solid great. Okay. Jerry, where can people find more of you on the internet?
Continue to check out my reviews hot and fresh daily at actionfigurebarbecue.com.
That's right. And as for me, you can find me, as always, on Twitter at thereelbradbell, REEL Brad Bell. You can find me on thegww.com. That's Geeks Worldwide. If you want to see my writing, it's featured on there. The Epic Review is basically housing our podcast now. So that'll be your home for all of our podcast content, along with it being on the GWW Radio as well. All right. Once again, from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, we say a goodbye to summer. We are